probably a common problem y'all hear about is we've got names and addresses for companies all over the place, specifically Prolog, and then we want to get them into our 360 database so that we can use those to assign members to. And right now it's a manual process. So people are already put into Prolog when we're going through the contracting process. And then when we get into going into 360, it's just another manual process of creating those companies. Now, oftentimes, we've been using it long enough now to where most companies probably are in there, but not all. And, of course, there's the standard problem of everybody does things just a little different. Some people put a period after ink, some people don't, some people don't put ink. You just kind of go through. So you end up with the same company listed 4 or 5 times or however often however many times that is.
That sounds like our CRM system right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an uncommon problem. I've heard people complain about it. We have application developers internally, but they generally are working on bigger projects that involve, HR and our onboarding process and things of that nature. So for something like this, we've been looking for a third party that might be able to help us.
Okay.
And that's where y'all fell into place.
Good.
So what we want to do today is basically just we want to document what your current state is, like how things, what data you want to push over to field, where it is in your Prolog, in Prolog. Does it spit anything out? If so, what? If it doesn't, then is it a manual process? I just want to basically go through the entire workflow of how you have to do it now, so that we can copy that and show it also. Because right now, by the way, we're going to record this so that I can then give it to our developers, and then they can come up with hopefully with an automated process that mimics the current workflow.
Right. Well, right now, I mean, there's really not much to show you in that it's an entirely manual process. So they're going through. Right now, there is no pulling of data. At one point, we were going to take the database from Prolog and load it into Field, but that was going to be 7,000 companies. And so we wanted to make sure we knew what we were doing before we did that, and also that we could keep it up to date, because we certainly didn't want to get into a mix of, we've got it all up to date, but then people are still adding. And so how do we go in and clean up 7,000 rather than like right now there's like 400 or 500?
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So it's very simple. We're talking company name, company address, I would assume probably not even phone number, and we've got a code in there for the unique code, and I can give you more more details once we kind of figure things out. But we're talking about maybe at most 10 data fields that we pull over.
I want to. Can you? I think I sent you a screen share.
You did. I'm looking to see if I can find the database, the Excel spreadsheet they sent me, and then I'll share my screen real quick, because it's been a little while since we kind of started this process.
Yeah, so Chris, our lead developer, Jason Faulkner, actually worked for Prolog for some time. He's really familiar with it, and one of the challenges that we often run into is, my understanding is there's a lot of different ways to configure Prolog on an enterprise level. There can be multiple configurations within one enterprise, and so what he typically likes to do is kind of really see how it's set up in the system now. So just do a quick screen capture to see where exactly you're getting all that information from inside of the system, and then that way we know what we're up against, and then from there, exactly in any business logic you have for that. I'm assuming the way that y'all are set up is that you want Prolog to be kind of your single source of truth. You probably have an admin that's responsible for maintaining that database of your 7,000 subcontractors, and you want to make sure that that's always reflected directly in the field. So anytime a new subcontractor is added into Prolog, then that also needs to be reflected into your enterprise field account, I'm sure. Is that accurate?
We're just looking like, overnight that would get swept in, because oftentimes if we add somebody new, to the list in Prolog, it's not going to be like that next within 1 hour that we're trying to set up the project in field. I mean, that's during our early on in the project before we even think about setting up projects in field, that process.
All right. And then I guess we're also going to have to build in some logic because you already have subcontractors inside of field, so we're going to have to. I'm imagining us possibly scrape them through and making sure that we don't have a duplicate first before we add it in.
Well, now doesn't field take care of that?
So yeah, but programmatically we're going to have to. For instance, if we tried to add an individual subcontractor programmatically, most likely if that subcontractor already exists in field, we're probably going to have some type of error that occurs. So just really put in some error handling in the code to recognize that and move on to the next subcontractor to try to place them in the system and just make sure that we're kind of managing all that. So I think that's what we're going to be probably focused on. But I think that first run and getting everybody in there, and tell me if I'm wrong, but y'all do want all 7,000 of those subcontractors inside of the field database?
Yeah. I think what it is once we figured out that, okay, we've got a process to automate this, then there's going to be the process of, okay, now we need, a little bit of time to sit down and go in and kind of clean what's already existing in there up a little bit as far as, like, for instance, Nabholz. We've got Nabholz Construction, Nabholz Construction Inc., blah, 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 it goes on and on.
Right.
And so taking those and making sure they're all assigned to the correct company.
Yeah. So just so I've got a general idea, how many projects are y'all currently is Nabholz using SIM360 field on?
I think last count I saw was 72, and it's actually I've got to run a report here today to see if it usually continues to grow, so it'd be somewhere between 70 and 80.
Wow, that's awesome. So y'all are really. I haven't worked with y'all in the past. I mean, y'all are really bought into the system, and it sounds like everything's going really well.
Yeah, we've got our own little pockets of folks that want this and want that, but I think overall a lot of people just appreciated the fact that now they have some way to actually take information out to the job site without having to carry a wheelbarrow along with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we got 72 different projects. All right, well, if you can show us just quickly the process for where this information is housed within your Prolog instance, and then just if you can walk us through, I guess your current process is to obviously add that new subcontractor to your Prolog instance, and then effectively what you're doing is just going and taking that same information, opening up your enterprise access, and then adding that subcontractor into your enterprise access and field.
Yeah, there's some folks that are, I guess some folks are more comfortable with Prolog than others, and so some of it is just our project manager assistants going into Prolog and doing their thing, and then the project engineers, project managers, it's entirely separate process and entirely manual, just going into field and adding those companies and then attaching the members to it. Now, there are some folks that are a little more comfortable with both systems that have gone in and they'll download the Excel spreadsheet from Prolog and then upload it into field, and I'm actually looking to see if I can find that, because they did a little, I can't remember if they did a little demo on it or not, but that would probably give you a lot more answers.
Yeah, that spreadsheet would tell us, exactly what fields you're wanting to push into BIM 360 field. So that would help a lot.
Sure, let me see if I can find that here real quick. And if not, if I need to, I can get our Prolog admin on here, and he can. Unfortunately, I'm not as versed on Prolog as I am on 360.
Yeah, that's fine. And then the last question would be, is it necessary, and what would be the? I mean, you've got 72 projects, and you have 7,000 companies. So I mean, that's 100 companies per project if y'all didn't have any duplication. And what you just mentioned was you said that they take an export out of Prolog and then import that into field. So it sounds like inside of Prolog, as you're managing and starting up these projects inside of Prolog, you actually have a distinct list of companies that are associated with that project. Is that right?
Yes. Generally, we don't create the project in field until usually after, well, I shouldn't say that. We certainly don't start assigning companies till after bid. So, and then oftentimes that's kind of when we're going through the process of pulling everything together to create the field project.
Okay. Well, my thinking was that if we had that information, that logic tied inside of Prolog, so even if you had all 7,000 subcontractors inside of field, my thinking is if, depending on what kind of software we're creating, we could potentially allow you to launch a new project from this software to say, okay, let's start a new job from this Prolog job, right? And if we have all those subcontractors in there, then it could go in there, add any subcontractors that didn't exist there, and then actually add them to that project as well. Because there's a two-part step. So like if your subcontractors in BIM 360 field, you wouldn't necessarily have to add them, but you would have to add them at the project level. And then the next thing you have to do is assign the individuals associated with that company to that project, and assign them to that subcontractor within that project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was kind of multitasking there a little bit, so I don't think I followed exactly what you were saying.
What I'm getting at is I think we can do more than just automate the process between updating your enterprise account. So updating your enterprise account with all 7,000 subcontractors, that's going to help you out a lot. But if Prolog already has identified what subcontractors are associated with what project, we could potentially spool up a new project in field. So we could create a new project and then go ahead and assign and add those subcontractors to that project. So whenever you create a new project in BIM 360 field, you have to go first, add all your subcontractors, right? And then the second part of that is to take your individuals for those subcontractors and assign them to the, link them basically to each subcontractor. And so what I'm saying is we could go ahead and not only pull up a new job for you based on the information inside of Prolog, but we could go ahead and add all the subcontractors that are inside of Prolog potentially to that project so that all that part's done. And then if there's contact associated with those subcontractors, we could potentially go ahead and add those subcontractors to that project and permission them as a default with some type of default permission set.
Okay. Yeah, that actually probably would work really well. I think everybody would be really excited about that because as I'm sure you've heard from other folks, the setup process, since you're not doing that on a fairly regular basis, that gets to be a little more of a slug there at the beginning, and so if we can automate that would be good. The only thing I might say is that the contacts, we may not want to do that just because typically their contacts in Prolog are different than the contacts in field.
Right.
Just because we're dealing with folks.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get us thinking about, or trying to get you help me kind of explore what information I have in Prolog, so that I can help determine. Okay, Prolog is basically a database, right? It's got all these different parts and pieces linked, and essentially we're going and recreating a new database field. So if I can take the logic that's already been built inside of Prolog, I know that this particular project needs these subcontractors added to it. And then I can go and just spool up a new job for you and add those subcontractors because I already have all that logic. That's really kind of what I'm trying to help pull out of you. Is sort of let's see how much we can get and let's take as much manual process out of it as we can.
Let me see if I can get our Prolog guy to jump on the call because he's going to be able to answer all these questions much better than I can.
Yeah, no problem.
Then they're now twice Friday and yesterday. No, I know.
How are you?
See if I can catch him.
So hopefully I'll have mine before we leave here.
Okay, he said he's available, so I'll forward him the invite, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Long form. I call my wife. It's her father.
I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud again, but instead of keeping all 7,000 subcontractors inside a field, would it make sense to kind of draw a line here and say, okay, any new job, let's use Prolog and let's search for that project and see if any subcontractors have been added to that project, and let's reflect that identically in a field project and make sure that those subcontractors are added to that project. And then it'll keep your database in field minimal, and it'll keep any of your I guess duplicate entries or anything like that inside of Prolog. It'll prevent you from having that same duplication problem inside of field.
Yeah, no, that would be. I think that would work well. I didn't realize that would be possible.
Well, I mean, if you're drawing a line in the sand right now and saying that, once we get this software going, it prevents us from having, I think it's going to prevent us from having to build in a lot of logic in the software to go back and make sure that everything lines up. And what that does is just allow us that, from now on, anytime you start a new job, use this tool that we're going to create to link that up, and then let it start the job, and then add in just the subcontractors that are associated with that job inside of Prolog.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud.
Hey, Vince.
Vince on the phone.
Yeah, Vince just jumped on. Vince is our Prolog guru. Vince, this is Chris. We've been talking to these guys, or just had this phone call today about basically automating the process of copying over company information from Prolog to field, which we've talked about in the past. And they were asking me a whole bunch of questions about Prolog that I don't have answers to. So that's why I said, well, let's get Vince on here, and he can probably help us out a lot more.
Sure.
But what they're talking about is that we may actually be even able to automate the process of project creation within field from the Prolog database. So basically, once you go in and Prolog and set up your project and you've got your subcontractors assigned, we basically just replicate that over in field, so we take away the whole problem of needing to set up projects.
That would be great.
From the different folks, and it just sets up in field, and it kind of gives them their standard set of permissions, and then we can go in and edit that as necessary if we want to. So anyway, gentlemen, any questions you have for Prolog? Vince is going to be the best guy to answer them now.
Yeah, so Vince, I guess what we're really trying to determine is, so each job, as you get started, you're spooling up a job inside of Prolog, and you're assigning subcontractors that are associated with that job inside of Prolog. Is that correct?
It's basically a contact list of people that we would, the contact list that we add to the project is a filtered list from a list of, say, 20,000 contacts in the database.
Okay.
So it's not a list of users per se, it's only a list of contacts.
Okay, so it's a list of, so contacts meaning that it's an individual at an organization or some subcontractor.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And then those subcontractors that you're adding in the Prolog, my question would be, are those the subcontractors, is that to the point where you know that those subcontractors are going to have contracts and going to be associated with performing work on that project? Or is this just a list of any subcontractor who might have interest in the project at all?
It could be a list of anybody that is going to be used in that project. So, for instance, a PMA might use that contact list to send the contract to an administrator at their office. The project manager might use the contact list to address something to a project manager. The project engineer might use the contact list to address something to the superintendent on the job site, or maybe even a foreman or somebody like that. So, like I said, it is just a contact list at that point.
Right, but the subcontractors that are associated with that project, they will be performing work on that job. Is that right?
Most likely they would be. There are some second-tier subs that might be added to that list if they attend a meeting a meeting or something like that, or they're carbon copied. An owner might appear in that list. The architect might appear in that list, and so forth and so on. But yeah,
So
they would be all associated with the job. They wouldn't be associated with another job or anything like that.
Okay, so then it sounds like then these are the exact same subcontractors that we would want assigned inside of their field project as subcontractors. Maybe not the exact contacts, but at least those subcontractors would need to be inside of their field project.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. Is there any way that you could just by if we give you the screen share capability that you could show us where in your Prolog instance this information is located and kind of what it looks like, just so we've got an idea?
I couldn't show you that on the SQL side because I don't have access to that. That would be Caleb Elsinger that would do that.
Well,
I could show you what it looks like
on the front end that they find.
I could show you what it looks like from Prolog Manager or from Prolog Converge. I can show you what that would look like.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I'll make you the presenter then, Vince.
Let me pull up Prolog Converge here. And all right, I'll move Prolog Converge up here. So my project directory is what contains the list of contacts. Okay. And this is kind of what it looks like.
Okay. All right. So this is what a lot of your guys are, I think Chris was telling us that some of your more sophisticated project managers are actually exporting this list, reformatting it, and then importing it into BIM 360 field.
Yeah, so they would go up and they would use an export to an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then they would pull that into BIM 360. And they may do that in Prolog Manager rather than in Prolog Converge.
Okay, can you show us that as well, just so we've got it? We're recording this webinar, so we can go back as we're trying to figure out the development for it. We can go back and reference it, so having this information will be helpful.
So again, the contact list is here.
Okay, cool.
Which is part of the portfolio. And then once those project engineers are in the project, what they're probably doing is going to this query manager.
Mm-hmm.
And under the BIM, they're using this export.
Oh, so you already have it set up kind of in the way that they're, okay.
So this would be the contacts that we put, and then they would just export this out to an Excel spreadsheet and then import that list into BIM 360.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that's probably the information we needed. I'm gonna get with our developer and sort of look into this a little bit more, find out. He used to work for Prolog, so he's really in tune with Prolog. I'm not really that keen to what we can extract from it. I think it is, like you said, built on SQL, so I think we can basically collect any information we need to from that, pull that out, and then I'm pretty confident with that information we would be able to probably create a new instance of a job, and then add all these subcontractors to that job for you, and that'll just save you a lot of time. And then obviously we would need to, just like you were talking about, Chris, is probably check this once a night, run through and see if there's been any changes, and then make those changes, make those updates inside of Field. I think that's kind of what y'all are looking for ultimately, right?
Yeah, I think so, because I mean it's not a. I don't think anybody's doing something in Prolog and then later that day trying to make sure that it's all copied over into 360.
No,
it's
probably
usually
not.
a little bit of a delayed process.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll,
doing it overnight would be fine.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. And then we'll kind of figure out what we think we're able to do, and I think we can put a proposal together. But it sounds like, so when we initially talked, just so I'm clear, when we initially got on this call, it was we just need a replication of our full database inside of Field.
Right.
And it sounded like that would be one solution. And then I suggested that instead of having a full replication, if we drew a line in the sand that said from now on, you're going to use this new tool to create your job, and we're essentially only going to add any of those contacts that are associated with this job into the system. And talk like that would actually solve your problem as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the second solution that you're talking about would actually work better, because I didn't realize that would be possible to go in and create the projects and only copy over the specific subcontractors that were on that particular job. So yeah, I like that solution much better than just having a whole bunch of names copied over nightly.
Yeah, I do too, and I'm not going to make any promises for certain that we can do that. I'm kind of like, I help out with a lot of the development and pre-development. I don't do a lot of the programming, so I want to make sure that, I want to touch base with our developers and talk to them through it. But I think that's possible. I can't make any promises, but I think that's going to be a better solution if we can go that route as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, that would be great, because any automation we can build into the project creation process would be really nice, just because that's not something that most of our folks are doing on a daily basis, so sometimes the process gets a little cloudy for them.
Yeah, so really want to ask one other question that may present a challenge. I'm assuming also that Nabholz is added to the project inside of Prolog, and all the contacts associated with that project are a part of this project list. Is that accurate?
I saw Nabholz on that list.
Yes.
Okay.
Talking about this list here?
Yeah, the one that was sent from Prolog, yeah.
Okay.
So you can see there's a whole bunch of them, like Teresa Els and Jason Haydock, etc.
That's right.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that they were being added, because we're going to need to add them again inside of Field. So it looks like all the logic would kind of line up really similar to what we're doing in Field already. So if we could just take the logic out of Prolog and replicate that inside of Field, I think that would save you all a lot of time.
So then the idea would be, as far as we would just need to, within this creation process, set up whatever our standards were going to be as far as copying things over when they create that project. So like, for instance, checklists, file structure, things of that nature, would that be possible, or is this just we're going to create the list there, and then we're going to have to go back in and do some more of the setups as far as permissions and things of that nature?
Well, and that's something that y'all kind of would have to decide on. So we've got individual emails there, so I'm pretty sure, and we've got first, last name, and we've got the type of company. So we could actually go ahead and assign each individual to the company inside of Field. But it sounded like you didn't want to do that because you didn't necessarily want all of these people to have access inside of Field. Another challenge that you may run into with doing that is that once you've added those people inside of Field, each one of those people is going to receive the email that they've been added to the Field project and all that stuff. And, it depends on whether your guys or your subcontractors are comfortable enough to and used to seeing that email, it could cause you a lot of phone calls from people who don't necessarily need to be added to that field project. Does that make sense?
Right. So
Right,
no,
like
my
your PMAs
preference,
are going to be getting emails on that, and unless you were to filter them out.
no, my preference would be that we would just do the companies,
Yeah.
and then as far as the actual members, we would continue to go in and assign members to the particular project in field.
Okay. Yeah.
So what information do you need from Prolog on that end?
Well, and that, we would just be adding the actual company. So we would filter. We would take the companies associated there. We'd add them as new companies inside a field if they didn't already exist, and we probably need addresses and then phone numbers of those companies as well.
And subcontractor type also. So like, you know, if they're a painter, if they're a electrician or whatever, that would be
Right.
too.
Right. So in our contact list, you'll see here that we have a list of our project contacts, which there's a contact ID, there's a company ID, there's a company name that's associated with that, and then there's the type of company, what division they're in, specification, their trade, email, phone information. There's a lot more than that.
Oh yeah.
As far as addresses go, there could be multiple addresses per company as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it just depends on what kind of information you need to extract for your project.
yeah, the trade is great.
I'm going to reply back to him if he asks me if we got it.
All right.
Put in your email.
So that helps. One other thing is if we're spooling the project up, so whenever we start a new project in field, it asks us, typically what's the volume of the job, what's the name of the project. I think there's I'm trying to look here. I'm just going off of memory. But is that information kind of available? It looks like it is.
Yeah, you got your project size, unit of measure,
Start,
you got the approximate contract value, you got the start date, the finish date, you got information about who the project executive, project manager, you got different fields in there, what service groups it's in.
So can we say, would it be safe to say that we could add the project manager as the, if we're spooling up a new job, go ahead and add the project manager as a project admin? That way he could assign new project admins as he sees fit.
Yeah, that would probably be the best way to start.
Okay. All right.
Kick
So
over to
who
project
is your-
engineer within the next day, but yes.
Is your project engineer your project admin as well for BIM 360?
Typically, yeah, I mean, usually the project manager would, be one of your admins, and usually your project manager and project engineer are your two admins. Maybe if we've got a superintendent that's really slick, we might have them as a project admin as well.
I would be hesitant to add a superintendent as a project admin. Just in my experience, I would probably feel comfortable doing your project manager and your project engineer immediately as admin, and then they'd have the ability later to go add the superintendent. But that would, I mean, if we could get all that done, that would save y'all a ton of steps.
Oh no, I agree.
And really just help you spool up a job super quick and go ahead and give everybody the permissions they needed, and it'll probably eliminate a lot of training and phone calls as well, just because everything will be set up for them already.
Yeah,
So,
no, I agree.
and I think all this information is there, and I think it's just a matter of getting it out of here and placing it in the right spots inside a field. So I'm trying to think, Michael, can you think of any other information we need?
Yeah, if you guys are looking at a data table or something, so the project data table would look something like this. So let's see if I can find the right one right here. So this would be the so this is what your data table might look like here for the project.
Okay.
This is
okay,
just that's just a text field. It's a street address, description. There's your project number, and then here's the other values here. start finish dates, the executive, manager, project architect. These are the actual data fields.
Okay.
So I think we're calling the field engineer the project engineer.
Okay.
Contact.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I've got territory, and I think inside of SIM 360, the enterprise application, they do have the ability to break out your regions.
Yeah, we have them by office.
Okay, so that's by office. Is that somewhere in here?
That's what our territories are. So we have territories being the offices, 01,
Okay.
NTC, Conway, Rogers, Tulsa. And then the region would be Southwest, Midwest, or South Central.
Gotcha. So, Chris, do you know which one of those y'all are using inside of Field when you set up the project?
We track things by office in field.
Okay, so that would be by territory is what they're calling it inside of.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, we have it just, we don't have all the 01 NCC, we just have Conway, Rogers, Tulsa in there. But yeah, if we could keep something like that going, that would be great, because that's something we do in our reporting, is how we look at volume of work and things of that nature.
Gotcha. So that's kind of was my thought, is that, you know, if we can keep as much information as we can bring over in the field, just and, you know, save that inside of Field, then that's going to help y'all later on when y'all are doing any kind of reporting at an enterprise level around issues or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to get an idea. I'm trying to think of anything else we would need to get the project kicked off. Or y'all are enterprise on Field. Do y'all also have Glue licenses or any other enterprise licenses within the BIM 360 software?
Yeah, we're Enterprise Glue as well.
Okay, so having said that, does every project that gets created, are y'all going ahead and licensing them with Glue?
Not necessarily. Not all our projects will get into modeling.
Is that something that, I'm just thinking in terms of business logic, if you're trying to start a project up, is it necessarily bad if every project, if it doesn't cost y'all any additional money, would it cause any problems if every project was already permissioned for Glue? They wouldn't necessarily have to use it, but
No, I don't think that would be a problem.
so you see where I'm going, and then you don't really build in logic of, I guess,
Yeah,
you know,
you're not
we could
trying to
probably
split
just put, right, but we might even be able to put in a field there to say, okay, well, you're starting this job, do you want Glue added or not? And then we could probably do something from there. I'm just trying to think
Yeah,
through.
I would say, given a choice, if I would say go ahead and create the project in Glue, and then if they don't use it, then that's okay, rather than maybe having to go back. If it's simpler to just create them both and move on, since it's similar information to do that, I would say I would prefer to create the project in Glue and then just have it sit there with nothing in it. Even if we needed to, we could use it as an FTP site, if nothing else.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to run through my brain on everything that we got to do to set up a project.
You don't worry about creating a project in Docs yet.
Okay. Well, the funny is they're supposed to release their API a long time ago. We were supposed to get early release access, and they don't even have it yet. And then they mentioned at their developers conference that they were going to be showing some things on it, and you know, Docs is still a little lacking at this point, so I wouldn't want to spend a whole lot of time investing as quick as they're changing that. So
No kidding.
I wouldn't recommend that anyway.
That's a very kind way of putting it, that it's a little lacking.
Yeah, so you get, yeah, you understand that. So trust me, there's a lot of hype around that.
What they did a nice job of really building up the anticipation, and they did a very nice job of deflating that bubble as well.
And that's
Yes, they did.
They absolutely nailed it on what everybody needs, right? Like, they absolutely nailed it in the marketing. And then the execution was nothing that anybody needed. I mean, it was so disappointing. So I'm really hoping that, within the next 6 to 8 months, I don't know if you've really been into it, but man, it has the potential to really be a game changer.
Oh, well, if they would just take the folders, not the plan and the shop drawings, but just the folders that you create, and plug that into the library, the ability to do permissions at the folder level would be great. I'd take that and I'd say, well, done, thank you, don't touch it again.
Yeah.
If it could just go through everything, if like that, it's like they're trying to reinvent the wheel with it.
Yeah. I mean, we're happy with like the little Bluebeam workflow y'all showed as far as slip sheeting and hyperlinking. We're happy with that, and that works well because we're going to use Bluebeam anyway because they're not going to recreate some extreme PDF markup tool. That, they're only going to have something that's really basic, so you're going to need Bluebeam to some extent. So that works well for us. The main thing we're battling is a lot of folks like they're just trying to make it simple. They like the hyperlinking, they like the slip sheeting, but let's not overcomplicate this and actually have it work within a day or two.
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest challenge I have when I do, especially for people that aren't really familiar with Bluebeam, is getting them all trained on field, and then try to throw the Bluebeam hyperlinking workflow on them. A lot of times they get a little overwhelmed, and I would love to see Docs just kind of take and streamline that whole process. And Docs has some really awesome features that, like for instance, the way that they manage the markups on the document. So once that markup is closed, it stays attached to that version of the document. And then any new version you add in, the markups that are still open, they float up to the top to that new version.
That's great.
So I mean, some of that stuff is it's going to be phenomenal if they can get it all dialed in, but it's so far from that right now. The fact that you can't, I don't know if they've added it in or not, but I mean, I uploaded the first job I opened on it. I uploaded a whole bunch of stuff and was like, oh man, I uploaded the wrong place, but then I couldn't delete it. So I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? So now I've got a project I can't even do anything with because I have no capability of deleting any item.
Yeah, I think if they would get rid of the shop drawings and plans folders, just get rid of those altogether and just deal with the other stuff for a little bit, it would be great. I understand that they want to do the, slip sheeting and hyperlinking in there, and but man, the fact that like loading up a Revit file, you load up a Revit file and you get everything in the Revit file. That sounds great until you look at you've got 5,000 views that you don't need.
Right.
Anyway, I digress a little bit there. But no, this sounds really good. Vince, do you have any questions as far as concerns that you're hearing? I mean, it sounds like really what we're talking about is, Prolog would be the master record, so to speak, and then Field would just be feeding off of that to set up projects and then put the proper companies in there and at least get us, a couple of steps.
I think that would be very helpful. I
mean, I know you're Vince is in our Rogers, Northwest Arkansas office, and they're a little more progressive up there as far as getting after some of these tools and using them to a little bit more of their extent. So they're a nice little test market for us up there.
Now, what would happen if somebody were to go and change the name of a company? So, like, you have and this happens quite often, for somebody to have a project, a company in here, and then they see that this 3KC, Inc. needs a period after Inc., so they add the period after Inc. Is that going to create an issue for you guys when you import that in?
I think that's going to be some of the final sort of things on building out that logic. And that one right there is probably going to be really difficult to capture because what will probably end up happening is the program would see it as a new company and would go ahead and add it to the project in Field. So then in that case, you would have inside of Field, you'd have a 3KC Inc. with no period, and then you'd have a 3KC Inc. with a period.
Can you use like the Prolog ID on that instead of the company name, or could you use maybe a GUID for
definitely
that?
for sure?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we probably could compare that to the ID, and then yeah, that would be the workaround for it. So that would be the logic that we'd have to use, is we'd have to use the ID, and if the name change for that ID, then we could in fact go in there and change the name for that subcontractor. So it would work in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so
I guess that's the only thing that would concern me, I guess, with passing data from one source to another, is the creation of duplicate records, and then somebody has to go in the receiving end and either remove those duplicates, and then the next time that record gets migrated in automatically, then you have another duplicate record, so you're constantly having to go in and remove that duplicate each time for each project.
And so what was that? Like the Prolog code or whatever? What was the name of it exactly? Sorry, I was taking notes, so I wanted to.
There is a Prolog ID.
Okay.
It's called the company ID, but I think also in the record there is a GUID for that particular company, which also doesn't change. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes even this Prolog ID will change. If I see two companies that are in the record in the database, and I have to purge one of them because I have two duplicates, and I have to choose which of the Prolog IDs I'm going to keep, and that's based on what we have in our accounting database. So one of the Prolog IDs may not match accounting, so I'll migrate those into an accounting database, or migrate those so that they match accounting.
What's your accounting? What accounting system are y'all using?
We're using Timberline.
Okay, so it's the Sage.
Or Sage,
software.
yeah. Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we could use the Prolog ID and compare it. So I think y'all are currently testing our 360 Sync platform for the documents in the library, and we do a very similar process there. So we're looking at the actual ID of that file, and then updating that file based on the description and stuff. So we've kind of already been down this road once, and I think this is going to be a very similar process, and I think we'll actually be able to use some of our 360 Sync platform to help develop this a little quicker. So I don't
Can your system handle multiple addresses for a particular company?
Well, we'll have to figure out. Is there
Here's what we have for Nabholz. So it's one company name, and then we have all of these addresses.
Right.
And then each contact is assigned to a particular address.
Right, but we would probably use whatever address is assigned for that project.
Yeah, the project, yeah.
So whatever company and the address associated with it, or the office associated with it that was assigned to the project, we would probably just use that address, or at least that's the logic that I'm thinking of right now.
Okay.
So we should only be dealing with.
Really, I would honestly think that it would be project specific. So it would be, wherever the trailer is, or maybe wherever the project is.
Okay, so you'd be looking at this field here, this address box, and pulling the address from the project.
That would be the project address, and then the Nabholz that we would use would be the Nabholz that's associated with this project, and the address associated with this project. Does that make sense?
So you're saying like the territory or office location, right, Clinton?
No. So I think if you go to contacts there, I think that's where we would be looking, and then the Nabholz that's associated with the address associated with the Nabholz here. Maybe it's not contact. Maybe yes. So there you have in that case it's just Midwest operations.
Right. Which is basically well, I'd have to expand this out. See, that's a display address.
Oh, okay. So then, but we could use that that address there and that's how we can handle that.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think this is going to give us enough information to get going and start having discussions with our developer about it. And I think we'll be able to put together some type of proposal for it and see kind of where we're at on it.
I'd like for you guys to have as much information as you need, because the simpler we can make this process without having people to put information in multiple databases, the better off our folks are, because their time is precious.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, so I'll they say programming is cheap because you can scale it to everybody, and even a few minutes saved 100 people is a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll get with our developer and we'll review this again and see if we can't come up with something. And Vince, I may reach out to you if I have some more questions about Prolog and kind of where this is coming from and how we can access it. And then you said y'all have someone that could help us out with the SQL part of this as well if we needed to.
Caleb Elsinger.
Yeah, that's it. That's in our
contact
IT department.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he handles all the SQL stuff.
Yeah, so once we get into, if we're starting to need our IT department on here, we can certainly loop them in.
Yeah, so that's, I don't know, for me that's going to probably be too much detail, but our developer may have some more specific questions that he'd like to ask Caleb about the y'all setup or configuration on that. So I'll get with him and find out what additional information we need, and we can get him on the phone to ask those final specific questions before we get a proposal together for you.
Sure. Yeah, let me know, and I'll be happy to set that up.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think that's really all we need right now to start looking at this. Do y'all have any more questions or anything else we can help y'all with?
No, I'm good. Vince, how about you?
Not from my end. I'm okay.
Well, Vince, I appreciate you jumping on the call on short notice like that. I wish I should have probably been thinking ahead and had you on here to begin with.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it, and we'll try to get back to y'all here in the next week or so. I just got to get with my developer. He's been pretty booked, and that's one of the reasons he couldn't jump on this call. So we'll get with him and see if we can't put something together.
Great. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.